I don't even understand the question, Ballinger, so I don't think I'm going to be able to answer it to test an extension. As I mentioned, I'm old and I'm not very technical. I've been using Twitch the past year or so because of the Reaper stuff, but I'm not an experienced Twitch streamer or even Twitch viewer. But I'm doing my best. Okay, that is weird because I have streamed before and I don't think anyone mentioned it. So I will go back to the other view. So it's, in fact, I can take the I can take my face off so you don't have to be confused by any delay. So when I was prepping for this, Reaper very kindly sent me some of the new Bones USA figures from the Learn to Paint kit because the copies I have are older. And in fact, I realized I have a whole little generational thing. So I thought it might be kind of fun to give people an opportunity to look at sort of the evolution of the bones. And I will actually just put something plain in view because the camera likes that better sometimes. So here's the original one. Let me see if I can lock focus a little better. And these white ones are really hard to see. Like, they often have more details than you can see because it's a little translucent on the edges and stuff. So that's why they started making them in gray. So these two should essentially really be the same in quality. They just changed the color of the plastic. So this is the one that I painted and that's been available for a long time now. And then this is the new Bones Black one. And I think it comes through even on the screen how much crisper like the chainmail and the fur and stuff is. Okay, hold on. I'm getting some updates from Justin. He thinks he knows how to fix it. So I don't know, have any of you tried the new Bones Black, and what do you think of it? So yeah, it's a little stiffer. In fact, where I used to tell people just bend this all you want to paint. Okay, Justin's having me go back to the face cam so that he can look at some stuff. So that's it. It's delayed on my screen even. Huh. And I'm right here. So original Bones, oh, and now has my camera frozen completely? Original Bones is super bendy, and I would tell people it's fine to bend it out of place and then bend it back. Where's my mango? So I do stuff like this all the time with this, like, oh, I can't get in there, I'll just bend and paint in there. I'm a little more cautious doing that with Bones Black because it is stiffer, or Bones USA. And Bones Black maybe, but Bones USA for sure, because it's stiffer and eventually you probably can crack pieces off. But that seems to be the balance. You get a stiffer material that maybe holds detail better, and you don't have the bendy weapon problem, but then it's not quite as durable as the original formula. We are troubleshooting or something. I don't have an update from Justin yet of what the technical problem is. But once I switch to the painting part, it shouldn't be a big problem. I haven't done a lot of cleanup on the Bones USA yet, and I have noticed that there are some bone mold lines and stuff. The promo figures that I've painted have to be sent in advance, so usually they're metal or 3D prints or whatever they have the masters in, so that I can get painting in time for them to be out for when you guys can buy them. So I will confess that I've not messed, but not, I mean, I'm going to be painting some today because all my skeletons that I'm going to be painting on are the new Bones Black, but I did not clean the mold lines off them, and for one-hit monsters and stuff, I probably wouldn't do it. Okay, so Justin says we can fix it by bringing the stream down and fiddling, or I can fix it after the stream. So I will take a poll. Type 1 if you want us to fix this syncing problem now and you don't mind waiting a little bit for the painting and stuff. Otherwise, I'll just switch to the other view and you can watch me. You'll just see my hands and hopefully the delay won't be that noticeable. I don't know that 3 is an option. Oh, there we go. Somebody put a poll up. Thank you. Thank you, moderators who know how to do all this stuff that I don't know how to do macros or any of all that stuff. So yes, there's a poll now. Please vote on how much this is bothering you. Well, thank you, Valander. And I've bought figures just because of people's paint jobs too. Sometimes you really can't visualize the possibilities on, a plain metal or resin or whatever. Oh, Jean wants to see us mess up fixing it live. So I don't know if I think Quindy's my moderator. If you can let me know what the well, I can click this. Maybe it tells me what the. Oh, it's pretty. Oh, right now it's even. If you've ever wanted to be a kingmaker or make some decisions, now's your time. Hold on, I'm getting a call from Justin. Hello. Do you need me to mute? Okay. Okay, we're trying again. Do I still look like I'm in a dub movie or does it look good? I guess I have to keep talking or you won't know. It's good. Oh, hoo, woohoo. Look at that. Justin fixing things live. Oh, it's going back in. Okay, I opened the wrong thing this time. Hold on. We're going to mute again so you guys don't hear this boring part. All right, I'm back again. Does it look good now? I guess I have to keep saying things. I don't remember any of the monologues I had to memorize in high school or anything, so I can't bore you with some Shakespeare. This could be the show. Justin and Rhonda talking on the phone. If you want that show, Reaper will provide it for you, I'm sure. All right, so Quindy says it looks good. Okay, I shall proceed. Okay, thank you. Yep, bye. All right. Yay, we fixed it. Okay, so I was talking about, I was just kind of showing off the differences in the, hold on, let me get to, the differences between the Bones USA and original formula, which, as we've discussed, you have the good and you have the bad. I'm going to shift this just a little for this close-up view. So that's the orc guy. And here's Mangu, and here's the problem nobody likes with original formula bones, because these guys have been stuffed in a little section of my closet for months. So, of course, his sword is all bendy. I'm gonna see if I can get the cats to cooperate. They normally hang out on the other side of the room, so I'm gonna have to see if I can tempt them over to this side of the room or get another camera. Right now, it's time for my big orange cat to go on his afternoon walk, so my husband's gonna have to do that today instead of me, because he only gets to go outside on a leash. And he can hunt on a leash, is what's terrifying. So this is, and there's not, I mean, apart from the bendiness, I don't know that there's a huge amount. The thing I was noticing most when I was looking is I think the relief on that dagger's a little, you can see the detail better, and kind of the fur, which, I mean, you can barely see the fur anyway, but yes, Corbin on a leash. I should get him I should get Kevin a GoPro, and you could just watch Corbin on a leash at 4 o'clock every day. 4 o'clock Eastern. I know that showtime is Reaper time, but I'm original. So I didn't have any skeletons of the old set that didn't have paint on them, because I used these for when we did ReaperCon Virtual. I did a class with painting this guy. So that's the original super bendy model, or type of bones. That's the super bendy in the gray, because I didn't get to paint all the sections. And then this is the new guy, and this is still flexible, but not what I would call outright bendy. And this, I will be painting this guy. Now, it is possible that if you bought the kit before and this is one of the reasons they started doing the Bones USA, is they would run out of these skeletons, or sometimes the other figures, the orc or the Mangu, and have to sub things in. And this is the skeleton that they would sub in if you got a sub. Which actually, he wasn't out when I made the paint kit, because he's even easier. It's just like bones, base, bow, done. Because I wanted to pick for your very first figure, I wanted you to get that satisfaction of completion pretty quickly. But what I'm going to do today really isn't directly related to the Learn to Paint kit. I'm using some of the colors from that, so that if you have used that kit or you're familiar with those colors, you kind of have a point of comparison. So the other fun part of doing this is then you have a bunch of equipment on your desk where you normally put like stuff. So I'm having to rearrange a few things. All right, so what do I want to do today? And a thing I want to do today is experiment with washes. And I think I did forget to go get, no, there. So this is the color that you painted the skeleton if you followed the kit. So this is desert sand. And any number of light grays, tans, beiges, anything like that would be a similar starting point for this. And then this is the color that I used to do the wash. And then it ends up looking, well, that guy, let's see. I think this guy doesn't have the dry brushing on yet. So after you do the wash, it ends up looking like that. And then you do the dry brushing, and it ends up looking like that. Which is fine, but recently while I was painting, I was working on the, it's not meadow green. I wish it was. It's Naga green. But I think we need to retroactively go back in time and change the Learn to Paint kits. Of course, if I had picked meadow green, then it would never have gone out of production, and we wouldn't be able to make fun of Bobby today. So that's why it's good that I didn't pick meadow green. So recently I was working on a project, and if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Bird with a Brush, just on YouTube, excuse me, I talked about this experience where I was doing some tests for the figure I wanted to paint at Reaper Virtual Expo in my class. and I did a wash, and I didn't like how it came out, and I wanted to try to figure out why I didn't like it. But it also got me thinking about how much the wash color affects the end result of your miniature, and I thought that would be fun to experiment. Because kind of the thing that I want, if there's a thread that I want to go through these shows, which I assure you will be all over the place in terms of level and painting techniques and what we're talking about, it's that not to be afraid of experimentation, not to be afraid of failure. Failure is how we learn. And I think a lot of people come into this hobby and you've been an engineer or a computer programmer or some other field like that, like, and you don't feel comfortable with the artistic side of things, and you feel like artists are these magical people that just know what colors go together, and it must be so much less frustrating for them because they're just going to get stuff right, and that's really not how it works. You can use all of your left brain skills, the downside of picking round things as your paint pot holders. You can use all of your left brain skills to succeed in painting. The thing you have to change is this idea that when you paint something, it should look good. Like you can watch, 10 videos on how to do wet blending, and then you're going to sit down and you're going to wet blend, and it's going to be awesome because you've done all that study, right? It's not taking a test. It's not a history quiz. It's not an English essay. It doesn't work like that. You have to teach your hands. You have to teach your little hands to do stuff just as much as your brain. So you have to actually sit down and do it, and you have to accept that as you do it, there will be failures. And in fact, often you're going to learn more from those failures than you will from the successes. So I think that a lot of the people you admire, certainly me, although I don't know if I'm someone you admire, experiment more than you might realize. We just don't talk about it. I've started talking about it because I have my blog and stuff. But most of these, some of these are miniatures I painted in classes, but most of these are tests. And I loved when Bones released. I used to have like test elf. I had one metal guy that it didn't come out right, and I tested like everything on him, and then I had another guy that his arm wouldn't stick on, and I would test whether I had primer or sealer when I was sealing. So this is something I have a couple of these Griffin Wings, and I use these to test washes and dry brush colors all the time. This wolf looks like Pippi Longstockings because I was painting a version of my cat, and I had to paint orange tabby stripes, so I wanted to practice and see if the colors worked. This is me testing whether you can shade green skin with purple paint, and you can. It looks awesome. This is me doing more test colors for, this was a class, but I do use these angels. This one is the test one. These angels wings are good for testing dry brush and wash colors. You want something with nice texture like that. This was me getting, for some reason, I went through a period where I wanted to paint really tropical paint schemes, and I would grab a Bones and kind of test my colors and get it out of my system before I ruined a real figure. So, although I have some paints I'm going to show you later, they're giving me the urge to paint tropical paint schemes again. This is, if you follow my blog, or I think I shared them on the Reaper Facebook page too, the succubi that Jean did in Bones 5. I was painting those, and I had a lot of dilemmas about what color to paint them, and I tested 5 or 6 different. This is just one of them. I think I put the other ones away. But I tested a lot of different colors before I decided what colors to paint those figures. So, thank you, Christine. Thank you so much, guys, for the people who came out to support me, because that don't actually want to see the painting nonsense. But so some of these are class guys. This is me practicing airbrushing, taking Erin's class, which I highly recommend if you get the chance. So don't assume that because you get something wrong the first time you try it, even if you really thought about it and studied and stuff, that's the process. Like, iteration is the process, and experimentation is super helpful. So that's what I picked out some paints, and I know a bit about color theory and stuff, so I have some ideas about what's going to happen, but I don't know for sure. So we're going to get to experiment together, because hopefully watching me do it will help you guys feel more comfortable about getting your feet wet. So I've kept these are kind of my controls. This is the guy painted the original way from the Learn to Paint kit. He's not 100% done, but he's mostly done. And then this is the various stages. So that's with just a wash. And then I have one that's just the base coat. So I've got, these guys are all my controls. And then I prepped a bunch of these with just the base color of the desert sand to experiment with. I'm going to zoom a little less out for now because I'm going to be mixing washes and stuff and I want you to be able to see that. So we know what the original color looks like. So one thing I thought I would do is black, because I think a lot of people like to, you know, if you paint all your colors on and then just do a black wash all over everything, that's a time saver, right? And it is. But I find I don't often like the look of how that ends up with lighter colors like this. So I tend to customize my washes to the value of the area. And I should have brought my little value scale because people love that in the class. I'll bring it next time. But value is how dark or light something is. So if you think of black is the darkest value and white is the lightest value, and then you have, well, I guess we can kind of do it with paint. So we've got black, and then where did my mountain stone go? How do I lose a paint that was like right here? So this is a 3 value scale. You've just got black, gray, and white. But you can have a scale that's like 10 is very common, 8 or 6, 5. But if you're starting here, kind of in the middle, doing something as dark as black or similar dark colors makes sense. If you start here, it's going to look pretty stark if you're using a super dark color as a wash. In my experience, again, I encourage you to experiment and find out what you like. So you may find that the time that you save is more important to you than what you think of the end result in a way. Because like these are like one hit guys, right? Like your adventurers are going to come up to these and knock them out. The end. Like you're only going to spend so much time on figures like that. Or if you're playing like another kind of miniatures combat game, they're probably not your top captains and whatnot. So to mix the washes, I'm going to use something like this. I have a ceramic one because it's easier to clean. So these are ceramic watercolor palettes. You can sometimes find them in like art stores or craft stores. There's like a bigger version of this. They call it a flower palette or a 7-well palette. That's pretty common to find. But in the bigger version, these little squares are pretty big. So this style is easy to find in craft. You should even be able to find this in big box stores like Target or Walmart. And I use these a lot when I travel for classes, but they're more of a pain to clean. Like you have to get in there and scrub. So since I'm at home, I'm showing you the thing that you can get that's the same, but I'm going to use the fancy ceramic version. This is another ceramic version you can get. It's very flat, and I think the paint will evaporate a little more quickly. The bigger the well, the quicker the paint's going to evaporate. If you guys have seen Anne's palette on her painting show, I use that a lot. It's for washes. I wanted these bigger wells, but I have like 3 of the palettes that Anne has. But the other thing you can use, and most of the ones I have right now seem to actually be the bigger size, is keep your blister packs. These are great for washes. So that's a recycling cheap answer to how to, because if you have a wet palette and you mix washes on it and then like someone jostles the table, you could end up with like black paint all over the place or whatever. You mix the oil washes in the blister packs or in something like this. This would probably be great for oil washes because then you could throw it out without worrying about it. So I know people always have questions about tools. So anyone who watches the show, I guess you're going to be hearing some of the same stuff over and over again. But all right, let's start with black. I'm going to each guy one at a time. And then they will dry. Hold on, I had a little water thing. So I just put my water in this. This is actually distilled water. Because since if I'm filling this, I might as well fill it with distilled water. If I have to, if this paint is starting to dry out and I want to put water in here, I use distilled water for that. I'm not fussy about it for like every wash I mix or my rinse water or anything, but I live in a place with like a lot of minerals and gunk and crap in the water. So anything I'm going to add to like a whole pot of paint, I want to use the good stuff. can, if it was brief, I think it would probably work, Christine. But I don't know. I when I work with oils, I have like disposable palette papers, and I haven't worked with oils with miniatures yet. I'm curious about it, but I don't know if that opens. Why does it say slow? That's a good question. So I used to have 2 of these. I'm not sure where the other one has gotten. And one of the dropper tips releases the water more precipitously than the other. So I liked the slow one. Is if I really want to be measuring my drops, I want to use this one. If I'm just whacking a lot of water in a paint that's getting dried out, I use the other one because it'll be a lot quicker. All right, so I'm just going to put some black in and then put some water in. So you'll see if you've followed the kit, I'm not doing the kit thing. I didn't just measure anything, and I don't in the real world. What I prefer to do, and this is where I'm kind of talking about science and experiments, because this is one of the most common questions that we'll get is like, well, how many drops of water do I add to make a wash? How many drops of water is right for layering consistency? And anyone who doesn't say it depends is trying to give you an easy answer, and they're not lying, but they're not giving you the best answer. So if you look at the palette a little, you can see where the paint is starting to fall down. You know, I pulled it up the side when I was mixing it, and then it starts to fall down, and I can see some of the white of the palette underneath. So when I was, my first few years painting, I started to use guides like that. You will hear people say stuff like, well, you want it to be skim milk consistency or whole milk or cream or whatever. So that's another way of looking at it is consistency. I don't love the consistency thing much for 2 reasons. One, I've never actually painted with milk, so I don't know what milk feels like on my brush. I do over time kind of learn the feel of stuff on my brush. The other reason I don't love it is if I was using one of these to mix a wash, which I often do, these have a more viscous consistency than just water. So the paint's not going to feel like skim milk if that's what your wash mix normally feels like. So looking at visual cues for this particular task works better for me. With layers, maybe I do kind of look at the viscosity a little more. So I think that's a little dark, even if I was going over that color. But let's do my test. So where are my papers? This is how I really do test washes. So all these tests are from when I was working on the Bones 5 Learn to Paint kit earlier this year. And then I wore out this paper, so I've now got another paper. And the stuff that's on it right now is I'm doing a video with some of this information in it that I'm going to put on YouTube eventually, as soon as I figure out how to get it edited. But this is how I test. So I get the paint and I put it on there. And sometimes you have to wait until it dries, but even now I can I can see the text and the colors depositing, but I would say the colors depositing a little too firmly. I really want something more like this. So we're kind of in between this and this right now. I would add a little more water. Again, this is where it's useful to do your own experiments because this might work better for how you paint. Rhonda did not say you should paint with milk. I mean, you could try it. You can actually paint with milk. So there's this paint called casein, and it is made from milk protein, just like true egg tempura paint is made from egg protein. So if there's a thing in the world you can make paint out of, somebody has figured out how to make paint out of it. So I'll go ahead and add 2 more drops, I think. Now, I will admit, really, I think the only reason I came up with the paper thing is because I was teaching classes and I was having to figure out how to explain to other people. Because I would do this thing where I'm like running it up the sides of the palette. I'm like, okay, I can see so much white through it. I think that's right. And to try to find a way to answer the question for people, I came up with this paper idea. And then it turns out I like it too. Everything is better with whipped cream. I cannot disagree with you there. One of my cats kind of has a whipped cream addiction. So this isn't a huge difference. I expected the 2 drops of water to make more difference. So I'm going to add 1 more. We might as well do 2. I guess I added a lot more paint than I thought in the beginning. And 1 more test. And see where we are. So this paint, I guess, actually has, which one did I pick? I picked solid black, which I guess is a little more pigmented than I thought. But I think that's close enough for the point of the experiment. So I've been doing my little test strips with, this is Reaper's biggest synthetic brush that biggest round. They have a flat brush too, the number 2. I'm going to be covering this whole guy in paint, and I like a nice big brush for a wash. So I'm actually going to get another brush. So I don't know if this is Cherry Artorama's like house brand or if you can get this anywhere else, but I like this brush enough that I just bought a set to experiment with and see. I don't like doing a lot of, yes, I actually used a packing slip for like 6 years for testing. It was like the same packing slip for testing glazes and washes. So it's a good brush, but I mean, you should be able to find a nice synthetic brush in many places of a similar size. Don't use ivory wicks. Use old trashy text. So the text I'm using, this is like my old class handout that I had some left over. So for recycling purposes. And it's a wash, so I'm really just gonna, slap it on the guy. But what I like to do is try to be, like, not start there and go the leg and go all over. Try to go from one kind of section of the miniature to the next. And if it is broken up in sections by equipment or whatever, try to do it that way. I can try to zoom in more for the next one if that is helpful. So because I was painting like 8 of them, I did do the base coat of the bones color, the mountain sand or whatever, desert sand, with my Vex airbrush for speed. And then I hand painted. If we get time, I'm going to do the same experiment on the grass with some bold colors, and we'll see what happens when you put a red wash on green and what happens when you put a purple wash on green and stuff. So we're hopefully going to get to test 2 different things. We're doing this on a fairly neutral color, and then we'll do the same experiment on a more saturated color. And color saturation, so when you say something saturated, that's a very vivid color, and then a less saturated color is a duller color. So like cherry red is a very saturated red, and then this is a more desaturated red, this paintbrush. Oh no, Quindy's leaving us unsupervised. That sounds like a terrible, terrible plan. And she's met me and everything. She should know better. And Justin isn't right in my ear. We could just be showing boobs all day long until Reaper got canceled. I tend to customize wash. Well, first of all, I don't paint with washes and dry brushing a ton in my personal painting because I'm doing stuff like for the Reaper catalog or the Dark Sword catalog, and it tends to just be stone or I did wet blending and then I'm doing a wash to like kind of blend some stuff in or something. So I really like to customize my colors to the thing that I'm painting, regardless of the style that I'm using to paint it. I'm probably going to do another show where I talk about how do you pick colors for washes. Because I think that is a perplexing problem, particularly if you if you're not very comfortable with color. So that's the guy with the black wash, and it's not dry yet, but we'll just do a quick comparison to where's my just has a wash guy. I think that's the just has a wash of the mountain stone, and you can see it's quite a bit darker. If I come back over that with the desert sand, which I will do hopefully a little later on, it's probably going to look pretty stark. So for like shadow colors in general, you often want something that's less saturated. Well, you always want something that's darker because that's what makes shadows, but something that's a little less saturated works better. We're used to seeing more intense color under brighter light, so you want less saturated color. Like the ones you mentioned, Christine, are perfect because they kind of fade backwards a little. So that's the guy with black. It's kind of a not controversial wash decision. I want to try this color. So I tend to like sort of creamy color bones a lot of the time. So I'll do the gray bone sometime. But I often like kind of like a bleached ivory type bone, and with the ivory triad it doesn't quite go dark enough for shadows in my opinion, especially if you're going to do a wash. And this is the color that I like. So russet brown I think is a great color for shading bone, ivory, old parchment, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily go down to the darkest, but it's kind of a, is it burnt umber? It kind of is similar to like a traditional artist color, but I'm forgetting which one, like a traditional artist neutral color. But we'll see it better when we get it out on the palette. So I wanted to experiment with this and see, even though I use more grays in the main colors, could I still get kind of a creamy look on my bones? Because the other thing you can do with this, and I think I'll do a different variation on this idea in another show, is, so I said I painted the base coats on all these guys with my airbrush. I could do these different washes, and then I'm going to do the same thing to dry brush them all. So they're all going to look slightly different. It's a way to add variation without adding like a ton of time to your project. So if you're doing, batch painting and you've got, like, you need to paint a band of 8 of these guys for your players to meet next week, there's a way to still get a little like personal variation. You could also, a thing that might be fun is you paint the fletching a different colors so they can, or the quiver, so you can go, I'm going for the guy with the red quiver, I'm going for the guy with the green quiver. I'm going to add just a bit more water to this, I think. Not at all. Divarcatus, I don't know how to say your name right. So the people who were here right before the show started heard a vortex mixer in the background because I didn't realize that my sound was already live. And I thank you for reminding me about that, because I like to mention I shake all my paints on a vortex mixer before I start something like a stream or a class. So definitely shake your paint more than you're seeing me do. I have hand and wrist problems, and especially when I'm doing maintenance on like all my millions of paints. So let me know in the chat if he's not in focus. I can't always tell in my preview window. But yes, no shame in my mind in using a vortex mixer. So we're going to use this color, which maybe I should have added a little more water too, but let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to throw up a drop more water. This is, even though it's a little bit transparent, it's actually a very punchy color in some ways. I feel like there's something else I use this color for that I'm not remembering to mention. Perhaps it will come to me later. Also yell at me in chat if I go out of the viewing area. I've tried to practice and been making some like test videos and stuff, but it's very interesting to paint where you have to keep something in the same place, because that's, we don't typically paint that way. So it's been an interesting learning experience to try to train myself to make sure that I'm checking I'm in view and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think I like this warm color on the bones. Not exclusively, but it's a nice alternative. Okay, I feel like I missed a part. I usually use a magnifier when I paint because I am that age. And that actually happens a lot sooner than you think it does. Like I thought bifocals were like for people in their 60s. And then I think I was like 38 and I had my annual eye exam, and he's all like, yeah, you're going to need bifocals soon. And I'm like, hold up, what? And he was spot on the money. I needed it the next year. So there's the russet brown and the black. And where's my original recipe guy? And the mountain stone. So you can see what a difference this is having. But I'm going to do the same thing to do the dry brush and wash step on them. Let me just check if... Well, and don't put, like, don't, I used to actually be much more stressed out when I painted. And the thing about acrylic paint is you can just paint over it. It really is not life and death. And if you actually got to the point where you gummed up this texture because you put so much paint on it or something, then you just throw them in some simple green or whatever and start over. Or use bones, and I would probably just buy a new one. But if it was like a fancy metal miniature, you know, that's probably an expensive option, although I do know someone who does that. I can take my glasses off to paint, but then I can't see this. Like, that's how nearsighted I am. So I have to choose something, so I chose to wear a magnifier instead. All right, so that's a fairly normal color. What else did I pick out? I picked out this as, it might be kind of similar to the thing, but we might, you know, this might be a little dark. I don't know. Because how many do I have left? Oh, I have enough left. Because I have a couple of crazy colors too. So I'm going to give this rich, and also if you have more of the bones paints than the main MSP paints, this will give you an idea. I treat the bones and Pathfinder and the MSP core, I treat them all pretty equally. It's just some of them you get the triads with, some of them cover a little better. To me, really, the only difference is some of them I have to do more base coats, and some of them I have to add more water if I'm doing washes or glazes. So I know Anne talks about there being a lot of differences between them, but the base acrylic formula is similar enough to me that I can get a paint from any of the lines to basically work the way I want it to. I just have to, since every paint is individual anyway, to me there's more differences between trying to work with an orange paint and a purple paint than there is in this one is from bones and this one is from whatever. If that makes sense. So you see that one I added a lot less water to, and it's already pretty transparent. In fact, it probably started out kind of transparent. So this is why I don't do the 3 drops of water to 1 drop of paint ratio type thing. Everyone does suck. And what's interesting is, and we don't talk about it a lot exactly because I know how you guys are going to react if I say that. There are still lots of days where I think I suck. And I know objectively, like, I'm okay at this, but I still didn't achieve the goal that I wanted to and that I thought I could when I sat down to paint. So we continue to have that experience of, you know, I set myself this bar and I didn't reach it. It just, where the bar is changes. And that's not to say that, you know, I'm tragically depressed about my painting skill all the time. The upside of that is it pushes me to want to learn and experiment and improve. It's just, we do still understand having a bad day. I just want to, you know, if you're doing this as your business, you stop talking about it, because how much confidence is someone going to have in you if every time you post something, you're like, well, here's my crappy miniature that you guys are going to hate. You know, you can't, that's not a professional approach, but that doesn't mean that's not what we're feeling inside sometimes. And then I have kept myself well reminded of what it's like to be a learner, because 5 or 6 years ago I started to study traditional art, and yeah, I definitely still have days where I like make something really good and it's like, oh wow, cool, I learned something, and then, you know, the very next day I can do something and it's like, how am I still this bad at this? But it's helped me learn a lot about learning too, if that makes sense. Because there's one big difference between my experiences, and I talked a bit about this on the blog, I think. I make myself, the Bob Ross thing that someone was talking about earlier, I make myself much less miserable with the learning the traditional art than I did with miniatures, because I really put myself through the ringer and felt bad about things not being perfect, and struggling to learn stuff, and setting these goals and not reaching them. With miniature painting, And when I took up the other hobby, I kind of was like, okay, my attitude is the problem here. It's not the thing I'm doing, it's my attitude. So there's not a huge difference between the Harvest Brown and the leather or something, rich leather. But there's a little bit, I think I might actually end up liking this guy better. I like the russet brown, but I normally paint down in layers for this kind of thing. Well, it helps me want to paint more. So if you're not torturing yourself for getting stuff wrong, you're going to be much more eager and excited to paint. It's going to be easier to, if you make the bar, so if you want to push yourself, if you want to have a bar, make the bar doing the thing. So you succeed if you sit down and do the thing. If I sit down and I did this for 2 years almost, I had to do something 5 minutes a day. I could just do a quick sketch. I could do a painting. I could spend 2 hours with colored pencils. I just had to spend that 5 minutes as a minimum. And that was the winning. It didn't matter if it looked like ass. And sometimes it did. There was one day, I call it Saturday Drunk Cat. We were at ReaperCon. We'd had a lot to drink. I'm like, I haven't done my drawing today. And I got out a pen. And that is one bad cat. Here's the original. But that I won that day because I did the thing. And setting that as the bar instead of what is my result has made me so much happier. I'm not saying I never have a bad day or I do a drawing or something where I'm like, this is terrible. But I'm so much happier than I was with miniature painting where it was all about the result. And I wasn't giving myself credit for just making the effort. Okay, so all of these have been fairly normal colors. But now let's go a little crazy. So I didn't go totally crazy. I mean, this is a dull blue and a dull green. But I'm wondering if we can kind of get like a, Lord of the Rings, Army of the Risen Army or Army of the Dead or whatever. Rhonda did say ass. There's the ass phase and things come out looking like ass. That is a reason to swear. So this is Clouded Sea, which is the 9.6 tells me it's a promotional paint, but it's come out a few times, I think, the past few years. And you could get like a blue and put a little bit of green in and get something similar to this. This may even be too dull. If I want kind of a ghosty effect, I think maybe I picked something that was too dull. I wonder if I should pump it up a little with something. No, we'll just go with it. We'll see what happens. And so this is what I was talking about when Christine asked about, picking colors for shadows and whatnot. If I used more of like ultramarine blue or something like that, it would probably be so vivid that like the crevices would be what was standing out because the top part's going to be like gray and white and it would look super weird. This may still look super weird because I am going to shade the skeleton with blue, but we'll find out what happens. Yep, that looks good. So, all right, where's my next victim? And it may be this blue isn't dark enough even. Although I do find when you start messing around with weird colors, sometimes you don't need to use things as dark as if you're playing in the same color family. Like when I talked about shading that green orc with purple, I didn't need to use a super dark purple to make that work because of the contrast in the colors. It ends up becoming darker. I imagine there's like a color science reason for that, but I don't know that one. That's one of those things I just know by experience, not from study. You're the Oprah of bands. I haven't done anything bannable yet. I was told we're allowed to swear. As long as I'm not showing you nipples or personal areas. Of the miniatures, I mean, not... Well, okay, I assume you can't show human ones either. But it is unfortunate because miniatures do sometimes have nipples in personal areas. There's a dog that I painted as a test for one of the Bones 5 Limited Paint Kit things that I thought would be fun to finish up on the stream sometime, but one of the sculptors made him very anatomically correct, so he would have to have a big blob of poster tack if I was going to bring him on the stream. And I did have a painting that I did a life drawing painting recently. And I was like, oh, I better put that in the closet just in case it ends up being in camera view. I feel like I've missed some areas, but I don't see. There it is. So this didn't go as horribly as I thought it might, actually. I think he does kind of have a little ghosty vibe going on. So let's compare him with, where is my normal guy? No, that's the black one. I keep losing my original recipe. There we go. So there's with the original, standard kit color. And you could mix up a blue like this from the kit. You just mix a bit of blue and white, and you might need to add just a touch of green. There's with the black. There's with the rich leather. So yeah, this might need to be just a hair darker, but I think I'm actually surprisingly happy with the blue. So let's find out what happens with the green, which is Gutter Grime. This was one of the colors from the Reaper Virtual Expo, which I haven't really had a chance to use on anything yet, and I thought it'd be fun. It's Weeby. Weeby, but let's not let Bobby off the hook. Bobby likes to... there's some sacks on a lot of Bobby's miniatures. This is the color you were thinking of earlier? Unfortunately, in the last round of cancellations, there was a surprising number of khaki greens bit the bucket, so I was happy to see this added to the selection. And I suspect this is a somewhat transparent color, so I'm not going to go nuts adding the water until I do my test. Yes, it certainly looks on the palette like it is not. And as these are drying, you can see more what I mean about seeing the color of the palette through as a visual clue to how much your paint is diluted. And every now and then you'll get a color that just fools you, and it will look right here, or it'll look right on the paper, and then you put it on your miniature and you're like, wow, that is way too much of that. I have to thin that down. But that's just the nature of pigments, as I'm sure Christine can confirm, and Erin Corporia. Pigments are not, like, if you're coming from like a more scientific technical background, you may think there's just kind of I don't know, dial, and you turn it and you get red, and then you turn it to something else and you get purple, and so on. And they're really, even though they are manufactured and synthetically produced, they are so not uniform. And their little idiosyncrasies and unique characteristics determine a lot of how a paint behaves. So a line like Reaper's line, the differences between the MSP core and then the bones, those things are related to the formulation of the actual acrylic binders, and Reaper puts in some flow improver, and everybody that wants to make a matte miniature paint has to put in matting agent because acrylic paint by nature is shiny. There's a lot of unique characteristics between a line. So if you try one brand of paint and you really like how it lays down and how it thins and how it feels, and then you try another one and it feels very different, that has to do with the choices that have been made with all of the kind of the base, the bouillon of the stew, or whatever, the stock. But the pigment determines whether it's mostly opaque or mostly transparent. It adds shininess. It can add other properties. So that's one of the reasons why I can't tell you, okay, it's always 3 drops of water to 1 drop of paint make a wash, because those pigments are out there just being all weird and unique. And it's not even within color families. You can get a blue that acts one way and then another blue that acts totally different. Like, a lot of people love phthalo blue, and I'm not in the phthalo blue fan club. Okay, I think the green worked too. So because of choosing, he looks kind of like maybe he's moldy, or he's been in like a cave. where some fungus is growing on them. And it looks a bit yellow in my thing, but if we bring in the more yellowy one, I think you can see the difference. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, it's one of those hellhounds. Yes, they're yeah. They're very, when I turn it over, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot of that. So I don't know if that could ever go on a Twitch stream. And I think I must have counted poorly because I have a guy left over. So let's see. I brought out these other colors for the grass. Let's see if one of them... Well, I guess for fun, let's do a saturated green. So we've got the dull green, the khaki style gutter grime green, and I'll just go ahead and put the same green on that's on his base. And I suspect that will not work. Yeah, when I was looking for those dogs, I was just looking for something that had like a stone look. So. Hello. So we're just experimenting with using different wash colors on the same, for anyone who's come in a little bit later, using different wash colors on the same starting color, and then I'm going to use the same steps to do the highlight dry brushing, and we'll see how different they look in the end. So green is one of those colors that's kind of more transparent than you want it to be half the time. So I suspect this is fine. Wow, that is intense. But that looks like a good kind of wash consistency, so let's go. Yes, I agree that some of the classic artists, wasn't there a thing about they couldn't use dead bodies up to a certain point to study from, but I'm not clear on why they couldn't pay people to stand in the studio and look like people. For examples, but which I think they did, but maybe they never wanted to pay women people. I don't know. Well, this guy is clearly a radioactive skeleton. This is an intense green. Now I guess the question becomes, can I dry brush all these guys before the end of the show? Got an hour to dry brush. I don't know if we're getting to the green grass today. That might have to be another experiment. Because I think that will be interesting too, seeing the differences when you start playing with colors like this. So we're starting with like a fairly neutral base, so it's not that much different than me painting the stripes on paper. The color's going to look pretty similar to however the color looks. When you start layering one, color, one more intense color over another more intense color, you can get some weird... You can get some cool effects sometimes, but you can get some weird effects too. And it's not always the same as if you just mix them together on your palette. Although certainly that's a good way to test to get some kind of idea of what is this going to look like if I do this for real. Oh, I missed his little hand. That's weird. So there's super green, which, I mean, honestly, I don't think that turned out as, if you had a rationale for it, but it's quite different than the, I mean, now this green hardly looks green at all, which is, you're learning about color, because color is always relative. It always has to do with the colors that are around it. So when I put this green in the context of just, black and blue and stuff, it looks more green. But if I put it next to something that's green, that starts changing your impression of the colors. So I think everybody finally got a wash. We'll compare super green with, that's the original color that you would use in the kit. And that's kind of the creamy bone approach. So it's definitely a lot more vibrant than either of those. So now I will put my messy washes away and start some dry brushing. Excuse me. Oh. Actually, I don't think I will use my palette. I had an alternative. I can just go on using this. It will be more scrubbing later, but that's fine. So where's my original color? So this is the base color that I started all the skeletons with. And it is a good solid color. And I'm probably going to do like a separate thing about dry brushes in more detail. But I have found that I've started to like using these very large, if you look at it in comparison to him, very large makeup brushes. And it'll make it go a lot faster if I use one of those instead of, this is the brush that comes in the kit, I think, is a standard size 4 synthetic brush. It's also a bit firmer of a bristle, where these soft bristles give you a bit of a different effect. I bought a smaller one. This is a brand that you can find in the US pretty easily, and it's pretty inexpensive. I think this was under $2. I don't remember the exact amount, but the other brushes were kind of similarly priced. And then I just might have a slightly smaller one or just use the Reaper one for, I want to try to not get too much gunk on the base since I already pre-painted those. I bought a whole set of like 15 of this style off Amazon for like $12. Now some of them are ridiculously enormous, and unless I start painting tanks, they will not be getting a lot of use. But if you paint tanks, that's a good deal. But even for the other brushes, it was, wasn't a bad deal. So this color, I think I can still use the white paper towel, because one of my other tips is when you're dry brushing white and it's hard to see, get blue shot towels. So, I need to go back in time and hope. I prepared to have to use a hairdryer, but I don't think I have to use a hairdryer. So I'm gonna, see, I goof up too. I didn't get enough of the paint off because these brushes are so soft that they really hold a lot more paint than you think. They soak up a lot of paint, but then they hold a lot more paint than you think they do. So you have to use a light hand and get a lot of the paint off. And I'm trying to kind of brush from above, because if we assume the light is coming down on it from above, that helps give you a bit of a nicer look and keeps things in the crevices not as bright. So bam, these really are quick. Because with the other one, I'll do one, or at least I'll start one with the other brush. I'm going to do his feet with this brush too. And you'll see what a difference it can make. But I think I'm going to do a whole show where we talk about dry brushing. Let me just make sure okay. I was getting texts and I'm like, is it Justin? Is Justin telling me that something horrible has happened? No. Justin's not sending up the emergency there are boobs on screen alert or something. Poor Justin, I'm going to torture him with the prospect that I will unexpectedly put boobs on screen. For a while there, I was kind of known for painting the ladies. So then I just come back in with the detail one and get a few places that I might have missed. All right. So bam, that's the one with the black, which is, it's not terrible actually. I like it better than I thought I would. So there's here's my finished original guy. And it's a little stark, but it's not terrible. So, for speed's sake, if you wanted to paint all of because pretty much everything else on this figure, I think you could do with a black wash and be fine. So if you paint the accessories and stuff medium, or darker colors and then do a black wash all over. That would work fine. But this is just the first step. I'll come back and do the white on all of them after. Let's try, I think I did this one next, so hopefully he's dry. Yes, because if you try to dry brush over something where the wash isn't totally dry, you will get some nasty, annoying streaks. You can test on things other than your person, but since my hand has lots of nice wrinkles, it's a good way to test dry brush loading. So I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's why I do that. I never tell people that they should put paint on themselves, and I am genuinely not a paint licker. Now that I've started doing the traditional painting, I do use real cadmium paints and other paints with heavy metals, so I'm trying to be a lot better about not just getting stuff on me, but I'm so messy that even when I don't intend to get paint on my skin, I can do a pretty good job of getting paint on my skin. That's why I have, this is a dedicated painting shirt that I'm wearing. And I almost always wear dedicated painting shirts because brushes go flying, washes go splashing. Just get his little feet. The spinal column is hard to reach with that big brush too. Okay, let me just see. This is the same as the original color I base coated with. So this is the desert sand, and they all started that way. And this one is kind of my control, so he's still the original color. So I'm not going to, all of the other colors that I'm using are the same as in the kit, and they're going to be the same between all of them. To when you do experiments, if you can limit your variables, that is very helpful. So now I'm going to, that is the downside of these big makeup brushes. When you rinse them out, you really have to dry them off. But I said I would paint at least some of one of these guys with the classic style brush. Which, of course, you can get bigger versions of that, too. I mean, you can get a bigger synthetic flat. This is, I think, the James Wapple Special. Maybe they even sell it that way in the art store now. I don't know. That's his favorite brand, I think. So you absolutely can get bigger standard flats. They just won't be as soft, and I think the softness is part of what helps the makeup brushes work so well for dry brushing. But then you have to, especially if you've been using a stiffer kind of brush, you have to retrain yourself to use a softer hand motion. I like to say, think of it as your Indiana Jones dusting off the artifact. Like that's kind of the pressure that you want to use, especially with the fancy makeup brushes. So I'm not one of these, scrubby type dry brushing people. I think the scrubbiness, I don't know that it makes everything dusty, but I think you're more likely to get a dusty looking result with the scrub approach. Well, now, to be fair, that is not the traditional part of being an archaeologist, jumping into a pit of snakes. So, I guess you could say when you enter your miniature in a contest, it feels like jumping into a pit of snakes sometimes because it's very scary and intimidating. And there are lots of great reasons to do it, though. And I do encourage you, if you're coming to ReaperCon, please, please, please put stuff in the MSP Open because it is not a pit of snakes type contest. It is, well, I don't know if I'd say it's a warm, loving embrace, but it's still a contest, but you're competing against yourself. So it's like running a race. Yeah, some people are going to get special prizes, but you succeed just doing it. Just showing up is winning, and then you get kind of a indication of, where your skills are. You get some feedback if you want it on what you could try to improve if that's what you're into. You don't have to paint a particular mini. You don't even have to paint a particular brand of miniature. The MSP Open is not, Reaper figures only. Some of the prizes are only judged on Reaper figures, but then other manufacturers can sponsor prizes, and those ones will only go to Dark Sword or I'm zoning out on. I know that there are other manufacturers, and I lose now, so I'm not Bombshell. That's one of the other ones. Thank you, Rainbow. I mean, you probably could. It is the Open. We've had, I can't remember if it was the last ReaperCon or the one before that. Someone had original puppets that they put in, and they were amazing. Like, all of us who were judging wanted to kidnap some and take them home with us because they were so cute. Especially, I mean, they got me because they were dragons, so I'm like, I definitely want to. I didn't judge that section, but I did want to kidnap them. So you can see that this one, with my little number 4, this is taking a lot longer than those first 2 I did with the makeup brush. So I encourage you to, particularly if you already have a bunch of brushes that you bought for different things, because some of us have a supply problem. And we like to try all of the great art supplies of the world. So if you are that person, like, you might have bought a brush for one thing, but try it for something else and see how it works. If you are just starting out and you don't have a ton of brushes, consider trying some different ones. So this is the russet brown next to the original Mountain Stone wash. And this guy's had the white final highlight added, and he hasn't. But I think this does give you more of that kind of bleached ivory type bone look. I need a better system for where I'm putting these guys so I know who's had their little dry brush or not. But I'm going to return to this. But you can see I rinsed it and just how much water's in there. So what I like to do is kind of pinch it between a paper towel, and there you can see the water coming off. And then test it with my fingers to make sure that it's mostly dry. Yes, follow that link if you want to know more about the MSP Open. And I plan on talking a bit more about that, and I've been thinking about doing something like getting some old bead painted miniatures or other miniatures that I have and kind of doing a critique on them. As you know, if this were entered in the contest, what kind of critique would it have gotten? And then try to do some paint repairs on it to show you what it would look like if you did what the judges told you to do or recommended it. We're not telling you to do stuff. We're recommending things you could do. Be clear in my terms. So I got a drop of something that was dried up old gunky paint, so I don't want that to get on my skeletons. But yes, I would never, like, an open style contest like the Reaper one is like the last kind of contest to be intimidated about. People are not gonna, there's a wide variety of skills and approaches and materials, and I think it's fabulous. I love seeing the ingenuity and all the fun people are having. Some people just grab their miniatures off the game table and throw them in the contest, and I think that is great too. There's no expectation of you have to do a certain thing a certain way to enter the contest. Now, there are kind of universal artistic things about contrast and color use and stuff like that can affect the judging placement and winning awards and stuff like that. But in terms of what you enter, I've seen some super amazing creative things. Wow, this is so much faster than that. Size 4 brush. But I do want to do his feet with the 4 so I don't mess my grass up. So yeah, as we lead up to ReaperCon and the contest, I'm going to try to share some stuff. In fact, yes, I think this is a good time. I think we've probably got as many people as are going to be watching, and everyone who got bored already left. So let me pause a minute and just rinse my brushes out. So actually a lot of the blue is gone. I don't know if it would, if I wanted to experiment with this blue for real, I might want to have a little bit of blue in my foundation coat or my highlights to keep more of that blue appearance, because it's ended up being pretty subtle. I think I kind of like it actually. Oh, so we can have boobs on Crow's Nest? Because I'll come there then. We're all just torturing Justin at this point. All right, so what I'm going to show you is, and I'm going to move this so I don't get paint on something. So when Reaper sent me the supplies that I needed for the class, they sent me a few other goodies. So first of all, I have one of these. So one thing, now, my understanding is they're going to try to make this in Bones USA. And I have a metal one because I explained earlier that, you know, we get the prints and stuff. But I can use that to show you a bit about prepping metals. So I can go through and show you the tools that I use. The mold lines aren't terrible, but I can show you the tools that I use to take off the mold lines. And then I'm sort of like challenged at gluing stuff. So I probably wouldn't glue it on the stream, but I might be able to show you or get another figure and show you how I would make the pinhole and stuff. Because she's got an arm with a beer mug. It fits pretty well. And it is just an arm. So maybe I could live dangerously and not pin it. But since I am kind of cursed in the land of gluing, I would probably want to pin that. Yeah, I was like, oh, I can't believe you sent me that, Ron. I'm so happy. So he didn't tell me he was going to send me that. And she's just gorgeous. So that's going to be, I think, in one of the ReaperCon swag boxes. I don't know which one. That's not a thing that artists know. But the other thing I got sent are, okay, that's a sample. Ignore that. This is one of the, let's go out just a little, I think. This is one of the ReaperCon colors, Rusted Anchor. They showed that on Reaper Live last week, I think. And then the other colors I have, okay, hold on. There's a bunch of samples too. So I also have some samples, which is why I've been thinking about going tropical again, because all of these samples seem to be very kind of tropical paradise. So I could show you the samples that are currently on the docket, but these are the Kickstarter paints. Now, I have not received my Kickstarter order or anything. I mean, they make the paints in-house, so they're already in America, and they've been getting them ready to go. So they were able to send me those, but don't freak out that I got my order, because I have not gotten my order. I just have paint. But what I can do is swatch these out for you to get a look. So I've done swatches before. See, now I'm running out of places to put things. So these are the swatches that I did for the Reaper Virtual Paint set. So I did this on screen and kind of gave you my first impressions of each color. Then these were some sample paints. And then this was one of the other sets. And because the metallics and stuff, you just can't really get a good photograph. You have to be able to do this to really see metallic paints. But what I would do is, after I do the swatches on stream, my scanner is pretty color true. So I would scan these and then put up the pictures so that you could see like the exact, well, pretty close to the exact colors. So let me know in the chat, type 1 in the chat, if you would like me next week to do swatches, and I can talk a little bit about how you do swatches or why you do swatches as well while I do that, of the Kickstarter colors and then the samples that I've received. And then if there's time at the end, I can do a little, here's how I prep metal miniatures. Everybody's different. Like, for one thing, I don't use knives. A lot of people use X-Acto knives and stuff, and I prefer files. I very occasionally use knives. Oh, and there's Christine now. Christine Van Patten made this wonderful. And I was going to wear my Drunken Mermaid shirt, and I'm like, no, I'm going to save it for next week in case they want me to work on swatches and mermaids next week. So far that looks pretty popular. So I'm going to plan for that. I'll get my sheets all done up beforehand so you don't have to like watch me write in tiny letters the name of every paint or whatever. And then we'll do the swatching and I'll give you my impressions of the colors. And the last time I did this, I talked about what are they useful for, or what I thought they might be useful for. You don't always know until you start using them. But there's some cool stuff. Black indigo. I mean, you can never have enough purple in my world. And especially like these kinds of colors, they don't always look exciting in the bottle, but these are two of my favorite useful colors. For kind of weird skin tones or things that are in twilight. So we're gonna have some fun with those colors, I think. And then it makes me feel better about, I get to see some stuff before you guys do. If I get to share it with you, then I don't feel as bad about it. And I will scan them and put it up on my blog or the Reaper Facebook group or some other places so that you'll get to see like the exact colors. Now I just have to figure out what I did with my paint. Okay, so now we shall return to, I think there are 2 skeletons left. The green and the greener skeleton. And that is very wet. So I'm interested to see what happens with that like super green one. Does anybody else love that movie, Super Green? Anyone else know what I'm saying? It's one of my favorite movies. I definitely do test the dryness on my skin because it's mostly just water now. Oh, it's fun. Yes, exactly. I love that movie. We have to watch that every few years. It's my husband and I, that's one of our favorite movies. In fact, Corbin the cat is 100%. He's Corbin Dallas Bender. He's not just Corbin Bender. I don't think we told them that at the vet because we're like, oh, I don't want to have to explain that. But we looked up how they spelled it, and he's Corbin Dallas. And when he's bad, he does get the full name. It's like, Corbin Dallas. Stop doing that. He has a little multi-pass somewhere even too. A friend of ours had a multi-pass and they gave it to us for Corbin. I love that he's not the only Corbin out there. He has a Chihuahua friend. Okay, well, so now this is interesting because I feel like there's no green left really. But we'll compare him with one of the other guys after I get his feet done. So it's possible that what I have learned in my experimentation is that if you don't change your starting colors a little bit, the effect may be a little too subtle to take the trouble to do. There is another way to get color variation on stuff that I was thinking I might do his leather stuff on another show and demonstrate that method. So there's the blue and the khaki green, and there's my original guy. So when you compare it to the original, there is a difference, but it's not like bam. So that's interesting. I expected it to be a more dramatic difference. But let's see how the intense green maintains after having dry brushing added. I did not actually see it at the theater. I didn't go out a lot at the time that was released. And a friend of mine brought over, it was probably a videotape, is how old I am. And we watched it, and then the next day I loved it so much that I made my roommates watch it. So in terms of keeping kind of the green elements, the intense color might almost work better if you want something a little more noticeable. Although it is weird that that color is the same color as his grass. I mean, that's kind of, I would use a different grass color if I were using that green for the skeleton. Just gonna rinse my brushes out. That is the one thing about these big thick brushes, even the flats, it is so much harder to get paint out of them than out of just normal round brushes. So all right, let's compare him with that's the duller green. That's the kind of standard recipe. But they've only had one step because now they need their white, and we do have time for that, thankfully. So everybody's had, I didn't miss anyone, right? Yep. Everybody's had their white coat. So I'm going to switch over to my shop towel. I have some unused sides of my shop towel. So the downside of shop towels is they don't have that texture. The texture on paper towels is really nice because that's how I know my brush is pretty well loaded, when I'm getting color on the top part of the textures with those little quilted depressions or whatever they call those. If the color isn't going in there, then I know the brush is loaded pretty well for doing dry brushing. Yes, Carrie, that was part of my idea, is is there a way to add color variation to the figures without making them enormously annoying to paint? So this is one way that I'm testing, and I think when I paint his accessories, we can test another way. But that will have to be a different stream, of course. And I'm going to try with that to demonstrate something about batch painting, but I'm not sure how it's going to work with the camera. There's a batch painting tool that I don't think will film well, but will be useful. You know, I'll discuss it in theory so that you guys can try it out. And then the last thing I could do with these guys is give each of them, so the original guy has blue feathers. If you just painted a different feather color on each one, that would be a really easy way to differentiate them for knowing, you know, players are going after the blue one or the red one or the whatever. So I'm going to have to check the original kit instructions. I believe that, oh, apparently it's dragon white. Do I have dragon white with me? I do not, so you're getting pure white. I believe they're pretty. I think the dragon white is a little brighter. I did a comparison of the whites, and then I keep forgetting. So that's something I need to do something like my swatches, where I have it on a piece of paper that I can easily reference. Okay, so they should all be dry now because dry brushing paint dries really quickly, so it won't really matter what order I'll go in, but I'll go back to the black one. And this is where I want to be careful to make sure I get enough paint off, because the streakiness of straight white on something is going to be a lot more noticeable if I mess it up. And I'm going to use a lighter hand and not go over everything, because this is just this is the top highlight. It's where the sun is hitting the most. I don't want to cover up all of the other color that I put on underneath. But I definitely want to make sure to get the face, because even a skeleton face is interesting. I don't use white a ton. I really generally just use white to paint white, and occasionally to mix in for brightest highlights. So I'm a lot more familiar. I've played around with the different blacks a lot more than I've played with the different whites. Pure white, I know Anne has said, is the most pigmented of the whites. One of them's a little bit shiny, which if you're looking to do that top pop type, just a little dot highlight, having a little bit of shine. And you can get the same thing by just getting some gloss sealer and mixing it in with your pure white. But that's very effective. So here's like this is the skeleton painted as you would paint it in the Learn to Paint kit colors, and this is using a black wash instead. And I will probably take a picture of these guys and put it up so that you can compare at your own pace. Yeah, was peppermint white shiny, or was it even like straight up metallic? That one I haven't really used at all. It looks cool, but I just never really get around to using white. So I prefer off-whites a lot more. And it's weird, even though I'm doing traditional art, I don't do a ton of mixing. The more I can get colors that are out of the bottle that are what I want, the faster I can paint. And the easier it is, and the happier I am. So I can mix all my colors. I just typically prefer not to. But both are equally valid ways to paint. I may have gone a little nuts with the white on him. So that's the russet brown. And I like it. I think it is a little more of an ivory bones, but I would probably want slightly yellower colors for the actual base color in the first step of dry brushing if I were painting that style. So I think it's called yellowed bone. I can't remember the name of the paint color. It might be called ivory or yellowed bone. But there's a ivory triad. Well, now I think they took away one of the colors, but if I want to do like a yellowed bone, that's kind of my favorite paint set for that. And the one that's gone now, I think, is the shadow, and it was a pretty transparent color, and you can mix the shadow or mix something like the shadow by mixing that russet brown into the ivory mid-tone to get kind of a darker but not super darker color. So it's not the biggest lack in the world, and I can see why people who might have been painting a different way didn't love that color, and it didn't sell very well, but I liked it. It was super annoying for base coats, but it was nice for other things. So this is the other brown, the rich leather, I think. Which, interestingly, even though it was kind of lighter, I think the end effect of the color has been a little more apparent. Yeah, I did not get all the white off my big brushy brush. And I don't have my spectacles on, so I didn't notice that it was getting chalky. And now I've lost my white paint. There we go. And then once I finish these up, I guess I can give them to my husband. And when we resume live D&D, I'm starting to feel like to do this experiment well, I should have written down a number for which color guy was which, because now that we're putting on the midtones and the highlights, it's not that easy to tell. So that is interesting that the effect. And this is what I'm talking. So, I've been painting a while, and I couldn't accurately predict everything that was going to happen in this experiment. And that's why you do experiments, or accept that you're going to try stuff and it's not going to turn out the way you expected. So this is why I don't want you guys to beat up on yourselves when you watch a video and then you try something and that's like, oh, well, that didn't turn out like the person in the video. It's like, okay, but you might have been using different colors and you're a different person, so you're used to different techniques, and you have to practice some stuff. So stop being so mean to yourself. is the main message of Beyond the Kit. Is stop being so mean to yourself. Well, I've got 2 left, so I think we should finish up in time. Thank you for giving me a time check, Trash, because I am not always super attentive about that. I should probably set a little alarm or something, because I'll get all distracted having fun painting and talking with you guys. This is the one that was blue. So what I'm also doing, because of that, I think that streakiness thing happened on the last one, I'm starting not on that big skull, because the skull is the smoother area. And if I get a little bit of paint off before I get up there, I think I'm likely to have a better result on the skull. I'm turning him to his side a little, which I think if you have the Learn to Paint kit, there are a couple of there's like a section where I discuss using angles of the brush versus the miniature to help you put dry brushing more where you want it. So it's not like a super controlled technique dry brushing, but you can kind of manipulate it a little bit and try to focus the brighter highlights on places where the sun or the dungeon torches or whatever would be illuminating this skeleton. So that's the blue. I like that blue. That is kind of neat. So that's the blue versus the black. And that's versus the original recipe. So it looks more gray now, but it's got an interesting thing. I think if you use just a slightly more intense blue or a bit of a darker version of that, you could get a kind of cool spectral effect going. But now let's find out what happens with Radioactive Guy. Running out of thumb to test on. Okay. Wow, this brush is so big you can't hardly see the miniature when I use it. So yeah, the one that started out as a joke, I don't think it's a disaster. So this is the softer green, I think. Pretty sure I'm losing track of some of my guys. And then where's my original recipe guy? And there's the original recipe. So it's got, yeah, it's kind of mossy, or like lichen is growing in there. Made it just a little brighter. It could be like a radioactive thing. Yeah, swamp skeleton. That's perfect, Josh. So, yeah, that's kind of cool. All right. I thought there was one guy. Let me double check everybody. Maybe I did get them all. But I can zoom back out and see if we can get them all side by side. Maybe I can take them off the things and put them in here, and we'll get them side by side. Although then I'm just kind of sticking back on for the next part, but oh well. It's good to get the side by side. Danger Man, that's great to hear. I'm glad the kids got you painting. Hopefully this will give you some ideas for how to take what you got in there and paint whatever you want, because that's the end goal. All right, so these are today's 6. And then this guy's been on the tape longer, so this could be fun. That's the original. So maybe I have to zoom out just a little. And let me know if it's not in focus. I can, this is double-sided carpet tape or mounting tape. So it's 3M double-sided mounting tape. And it will hold metal miniatures. It would hold that big, thick mermaid, no problem. I would use a bigger piece than I've used on these guys. And if you use it on plastic, you can often pop the bones off and use it multiple times. Oh, that's great to hear. I think I like that Reaper did their little stay-at-home kits as well. So I hope people did get some of those and learn to paint kits. And when we were all trapped inside for the past year, that was something to do. So let's see. That's the russet brown and that's the rich leather. So that's kind of 2 creamy bone options. Let's put the green and the green together. And then these are the colors where we went a little crazier, but it ended up not being super crazy. So that's the bright green. That's the same green that's painted on their bases. That's more of a khaki green. And this is the clouded sea. It's like a desaturated teal. So, I expected to have at least one of these not turn out great. So I'm kind of surprised. But it would have been fine if one of them or more hadn't turned out well. That would have been fine. Hopefully, it will give you more comfort in experimenting, and especially if you take guys like this that are just meant for your players to kill pretty quickly. Go ahead and experiment on them. I mean, they're not your favorite characters or miniatures. They're not your most important big bad. Go ahead and learn more about your paints and try out new techniques on them and stuff. It's pretty low risk, right? I mean, even if one of these had turned out awful, I'm probably still going to finish them and hand them to my husband, and then we'll have them for D&D, because I know we can take these guys. So I try not to paint things that we can't take. That's not true. But mostly I'm just painting things for Ron, which definitely I've painted things we can't take. I don't think we can take a Hydra yet. Maybe. We leveled up recently. But so did anyone have any questions about what I did? Or I guess if people came in late, maybe I should kind of summarize what we were doing as an experiment, because I know it's the nature of Twitch streams that people are kind of in and out. So let me just rinse out my brushes before I do that, because it's tough to get paint out. But I will, I don't think I can reach it easily, but my secret weapon for cleaning my brushes is the Master's brush cleaner and restorer, and I'll try to have that closer to hand next time so I can share the container with you. So for anyone who came in late, this is the skeleton from the Reaper Learn to Paint kit. Core skills. There are 2 Reaper Learn to Paint kits. So this guy is painted as he would be painted from the kit. So with the same colors and the instructions and stuff, because he came from a class that I did for Virtual ReaperCon, where I was like, okay, well, it's some people like written instructions and pictures, but some people like video and feeling like you have someone helping you out while you're doing it. So we painted this guy. I didn't quite get to the base, I don't think. So his base actually isn't painted. I'll have to paint that so we have him as the control when we work on the base experiments. But I wanted to experiment with the idea of what would happen if you use different color washes. So partly as an idea for ways that if you're painting a whole bunch of the same figure, how you can add some variation to them, and partly just as an experiment to study how do different colors work for washes, because a lot of people are used to just using black or just using a dark brown or whatever, and it can seem intimidating to start picking your own wash colors. So I thought if I did an experiment, perhaps it would help you guys feel better about doing an experiment. So we mixed up all these colors, and some of them are pretty standard and some of them were a little crazy, but you could see that after I added the original So this was the original base coat color, and then we did an additional stage of dry brushing with the white. After I added that over, it really tempered the effect of all of the colors. A little more than I expected, actually. So, does anyone have any questions about any of the tools that I used, or kind of the process, or just how to feel more comfortable trying stuff out, or not getting mad at yourself when your painting doesn't work, or kind of any of the stuff we've been discussing today? How great Fifth Element is, and why you should name your cat after that, or dog. Any questions or thoughts about those things? How do I clean the makeup brushes? Unfortunately, my little thing is so dirty. This is a paint puck. I was thinking I maybe will do a thing on just washing brushes. So this is a thing called a paint puck. So I have my standard rinse water. I have this one, and you can kind of, it's like soft silicone nodules, and you can kind of get in there a little more. So then I rub it in that Master Soap, which is like a cake soap paint puck, P-U-C-K, P-U-P-U-C-K, just so we're clear on that. And let me see if I can get the Master Sin soap. All right, my head might end up being in the one camera, but we'll just live with that. Be afraid of my giant head. So this is the Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. And I have been really impressed with this. I will probably get some junk brushes and just let paint dry on them and then test it out with you guys, and you will be amazed. Because I was at a paint and take, and if you want to see where brushes get punished, a paint and take is the answer to that. It's not going to be a great demonstration right now because I use really light colors, so you're not going to see them come out of the brush. I'll have to do a separate kind of brush thing. But you get it wet, you rub it around in there. I use it on the paint puck, and particularly with darker colors, you just keep kind of, pressing it with the paper towel, and you'll see paint come out. That's probably what this is, actually. So you'll see paint come, like where that metal ferrule meets the bristles. You'll get a line like that of color if there's still paint in there. And I just keep rinsing it in that, and I rub it on so I don't use a paper towel to wick my brush. I use this sponge. So this is a dampened sponge. It's just a regular old kitchen sponge. I'll have my brush, and so after I put it in the water, I just wipe it against this paper towel. It's softer than a paper towel, and because it's damp, it takes excess water off, but it doesn't take too much off. I believe Michael Proctor, if you've seen his show, which airs tomorrow, he uses damp paper towel, which a lot of people do that. But I like these sponges because they last a long time. But I also clean the brush with these sponges. So I'll clean it on that paint puck, but I'll also kind of scrub on here. And I'll start with the big ones, so then I get lots of soap in my sponge, and then by the time I get to the little ones, I can just use the soap in the sponge. So it's got a little bit of texture, and it's rubbing against the brushes and helping get the caked in paint off, but it's not a really harsh texture that's going to damage them. So I don't kind of like mash them. I try to work in the direction where I'm pulling away from, you don't want to push toward, this is a gunky brush, I don't care. But, if you're pushing towards the ferrule, if you're scrubbing like this, that's very harsh. If you're kind of scrubbing more like that, that's going to help your brush last a little longer. Keep the bristles, in a nice shape. So those are my secrets for washing brushes. But I will be honest, I washed these brushes more than my fancy Kolinsky sables, because my fancy Kolinsky sables are just getting dipped in paint and then like that. This is getting paint all up in there. The bristle head is thick. The paint is being used in a more aggressive way. In some ways, that's almost the disincentive to doing tabletop painting, is that the cleanup afterwards is more of a pain. But yes, before we finish up, I should mention the other Reaper shows, I imagine. I don't know if Justin's still listening, if he can put that graphic up. Because otherwise, so all these months that I've been mocking Michael Proctor for not remembering this stuff, and now I have to do it, and it's going to be so bad. Okay, so Anne is on every day. I'll switch my viewer. Anne is on every day. I think 11:30 Central she starts and goes for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then Mondays is this show. Currently 2 to 4 p.m. Central, so I'm going to list all the times in Reaper time, which is Central. Tuesday is the Crow's Nest, which is Michael Proctor and his co-host Jason Wiebe, and then they usually have a guest, and Michael does some painting, and they like to mix it up and keep it interesting. So it's one of my favorites to watch. And I was on last week. Actually, the people who were excited about the idea of kind of looking at a miniature and how you would critique it if it was at the MSP Open, I did a deep dive on a contest style miniature that I painted for something, and talked about how I took inspirational influences and translated that into how I would apply paint on the miniature. So if that kind of thing sounds interesting, look for last week's Crow's Nest, which should still be here on Twitch, but I would guess is also probably already uploaded on the Reaper Miniatures YouTube channel. Then Wednesdays is, so Anne in the morning, but I think Miniatures Den in the afternoon, and I want to say 2 to 4 Central, but I am making stuff up, so I don't know for sure. Quindy's in the chat, and she will correct any hopefully any insanity that I'm getting wrong. Then Thursday is kind of the bedrock of the Reaper shows. Is you still got Anne in the morning, and then in the afternoon you have a new show, which is the Crafty Creative with Josh somebody. I don't remember his last name. Sorry. And there's also a Clever Crow show. If you haven't met Josh Foreman, thank you, Queenie. If you haven't met him yet, I mean, watch his show, but you can also go watch the Crow's Nest and kind of he's a very interesting guy. I enjoyed watching that show a lot. He's got a very diverse background, and he builds he's doing terrain, but he's also doing maquettes, and so he's kind of drawing on a lot of influences from game design and kind of movie design and stuff like that. So I think it would be very interesting for anyone who's interested in putting together nice game tables. It's worth watching him, or just kind of goosing your creativity a little. It'd probably be worth watching him. Then at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. So I'm going to say 7 p.m. Central is Reaper Live on Thursdays. And that's where you get to hear from the Reaper owners and main staff, and 6 p.m. Central. I was incorrect about that. I got it all loaded on my personal calendar, so I only see it when it's about to come up. But you can get some bad jokes. You can get to see a lot of previews. If you like seeing previews of paints and miniatures, that is the show for you. Although I'm going to try to compete with them and share with you guys as much as I can up close and personal previews of stuff that I get to see. Now, sometimes they'll send me something and I'm not allowed to show it yet, and I'm not going to cheat and show that. But I always check and see if I can show you guys stuff. And then Fridays is kind of the grab bag day. So I think every Friday you get, I can't remember what it's called, Reaper Land with John and Dave. I think it's called Reaper Land. Did they change the name? I feel like they changed the name now, I'm not remembering. And then some Fridays, there is a Bones update with Ron, although they may be kind of done with that because at this point we're just waiting for the stuff. So there's not really previews to show anymore because they've shown you every possible thing, I think. No more Bones update, Quindy verifies. Although I'm sure that John will be sharing with us on some of the other shows pictures of them, unpacking the trucks and doing the fulfillment and stuff. And I might see, I have some pictures of, I've been at Reaper for 3 fulfillments, although I, for some reason, don't think I took pictures at Bones 3. But I should have some pictures from Bones 2 and Bones 4 fulfillment. So I'll have to see if I can dig those up. Not that I know how to make them on the stream. So I'd probably just show you my iPad and look at pictures there because that's so non-technical. But then the other thing that happens some Fridays is every other Friday is Reaper Errant. this weekend, coming up this Friday. And that is where myself and some of the other Reaper artists, Jason Wiebe, Jean Van Horn, Michael Proctor, Jen Greenwald, and the inimitable Bobby Jackson, get together and we play in. It is the best show, Trash Marvel. I'm gonna agree. Reaper Aaron is the best show, and that has nothing to do with my being there. That's probably like the least best part of it. But Frank from Nightheart Gaming has some table setups that just will blow your mind, and all our little miniatures are there. And this week is gonna be especially. It's gonna be a thing because where we left off last weekend, I rolled a 1, and now a blue dragon knows that we're there. So that's awesome. Very excited about my upcoming depth. We're gonna try and stay alive. We're gonna do our best. But yes, I like dragons. So if I have to die to anything, like let it be a dragon. But then once a month or so, on a non-Reaper Errant Friday, you get House of Vex, which is Aaron Lovejoy showing you how to use the awesome Vex airbrush. And that is definitely worth watching too. And I don't know what's going to happen when they add a whole bunch more shows and that quiz becomes even harder. So I don't think House of Vex has a set time or anything. Reaperland does, and I don't know what that time is. And Reaper Errant does, and that time is, I'm going to say 7 p.m. Central. I don't know. I hardly ever know what time it is in my own time zone. So 3 p.m. Central for Reaperland. Go watch that because they have some fun. Because they've got the cool new studio now, so all the shows are really looking great. And 6 p.m. Central for Reaper Errant. Yes, that sounds correct. And we're a little Reaper soon on the whole starting on time thing. We're gonna have to show this segment to Michael so that he can enjoy the fact that he's not the only person who fails this quiz. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I'll be back again next. Oh, Sadie, right, of course. Thank you, Quindy. Because Sadie's show used to be on a different day. And then I forgot that we now have a Saturday show, which is Sadie's show at 3 p.m. And Sadie is the lady. So Ann Forrester kind of created the MSP paint lines and a lot of the colors that you're familiar with. But Sadie is the person who's been doing that for the past few years, and she is the person who gives us all those lovely metallic special edition and promo colors because she likes the sparklies. And so she's coming out with some beautiful colors. And she started out her show, if you go back and look at the archives on YouTube, she started out following the Learn to Paint kids because she had been mixing paint and hadn't really painted a lot. And now she's painting all kinds of cool things. So if you like paint previews, I think she often has some of the paints that she's working on her show for you to look at. And then there's a lot of chatting about pets and good fun stuff like that. So I'm told in chat that House of Vex usually starts at 7 p.m. Central. And I think it's every 3 to 4 weeks. Is that what you're trying to say? I think it's about once a month. It a lot depends on it. It's like Aaron's schedule plus Reaper's schedule, so it can't be too set in stone. It has to have some flexibility, but it's a lot of fun. And Aaron is, I for years hated the idea of using an airbrush, and I had one and I hardly ever used it, and I took a class with him and I watched some stuff, and I feel so much more comfortable and confident between the way the Vex works and understanding how to use it because of Aaron. I'm way happier. So thank you everyone for all the nice comments in the chat, and I hope you had a good time. And let's see. So Justin, can you, hopefully he still will chat me, because Justin's still supposed to look for a raid, even though I can't hear him in my ear. He's still going to look for a raid. I don't know if he'll text me what it is or if it's just going to be a big surprise for all of us to see where we're going. But thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. Oh, we're going to raid Miniatures Den. And now I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to do. I think just stop streaming. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much.